The train hissed into the frozen station. But what greeted her wasn't love, it was silence, stares, and shame. The snow whispered across the empty station like a secret no one dared speak aloud. And then the train screamed into Dry Creek, hissing steam and sorrow. She stepped down, small suitcase in hand, heart pounding louder than the iron wheels behind her. Dozens stared. None smiled. He was there. He saw her, turned, and walked away. It's just like that, no name, no word, no mercy. And that was how her new life began. 0:30 onward, full scene opens it, was December of 1873. Snow had swallowed Dry Creek in a quiet, merciless frost. The kind that crept into your bones and made even warm memories feel cold. The train station was barely more than a wooden bench and a rusting sign. But to Amara, it had been the place where her dreams would begin. She clutched the envelope in her coat pocket. A letter from a man named Thomas Greeley, a rancher, a war veteran, a supposed man of honor. His words had been kind, his promises tender. I don't care where you're from, he'd written. I want a good woman, not a bloodline. So she came. From the far south, mixed by blood, pure by heart. But the moment she stepped off that train, and he saw her dusky skin, her full lips, the shape of her face that betrayed her heritage, something inside him shifted. He stiffened. His jaw clenched. His pride, fed by the town's whispering eyes, overpowered whatever decency he'd once pretended to have. She ain't what I was told. Thomas muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. I didn't ask for a colored girl. Amara's breath caught. The cold in the air couldn't match the cold in her chest. He walked away. The crowd didn't say a word. One woman snickered. A boy pointed. The station master looked at her like a misplaced package. She stood there, humiliated, abandoned. Heartbroken, the letter burned in her hand. She didn't cry. Not yet. Amara sat on the edge of the platform, staring at the snow that melted under her warm tears. She had nowhere to go. No name in this town, no one who would even speak to her, but someone was watching. From across the street, in the shadow of the old saloon, a figure stood still, hat low, face hidden, breath fogging in the winter air. He saw what Thomas did, and he didn't forget it. Not that day, not ever. The cold hadn't eased. If anything, it had sunk deeper into her skin now. Not just from the snow, but from the shame. Amara sat there motionless, boots numb against the frostbitten boards, her small suitcase unopened beside her like a memory she couldn't unpack. Across the street, the saloon door creaked open. A gust of wind swept through, and out stepped a man wrapped in a long dark coat, black gloves, and a hat pulled so low you could barely see his eyes. But she felt them. He didn't come closer, not yet. He just stood still, arms folded, watching the girl that the whole town had turned its back on. Inside the station, 2 railway workers leaned against a wall, snickering just loud enough for her to hear. Guess Greeley don't like M spicy after all. One said, spitting tobacco on the snow. Amara didn't flinch. Another woman, walking by with a fur muff and narrow eyes, muttered she should have stayed wherever she came from. Still, Amara said nothing. Silence had become her only defense. She finally stood up, not because she had strength, but because she had no choice. Her body ached from the cold, her pride from the humiliation. She lifted her suitcase and walked, slow and steady, down Main Street with nowhere to go. The townsfolk parted like she carried plague. Some looked with pity, most with disgust. She passed the general store, then the blacksmith, and kept walking until the edge of town began to fade into the snowy hills beyond. That's when she heard boots crunching behind her. Not fast, not angry. Just steady, calculated. She turned. It was him, the man from the saloon. He stopped a few feet away, hands in his coat, gaze unreadable beneath the shadow of his brim. You got a place to go? He asked. His voice was low, coarse but not unkind. Amara swallowed. No. He nodded once, as if he already knew the answer. People round here ain't kind to what they don't understand, he said. But you don't look like the type that needs their kindness. She tilted her head. What type do I look like? He didn't smile. He didn't blink. You look like someone who's going to make M choke on their judgment someday. Amara didn't know what to say. No one had spoken to her like that in days, maybe years. She didn't even know his name. But before she could ask, he turned and started walking away, toward the woods behind town. Then he stopped without looking back. You cumin, or you freezing? The snow crunched beneath her boots as Amara followed. Him not because she trusted him, but because standing still meant freezing. And she'd already endured enough cold for one day. He didn't talk, just walked through the narrow path behind the town where pine trees stood like silent guards. The wind whispered between them, but Amara could only hear the rhythm of her breath and the thudding ache of uncertainty in her chest. Where are we going? She asked, gripping her coat tighter. To a place the town don't bother with. He replied without turning. Where you can breathe without folks telling you shouldn't. She glanced back once. Dry Creek was fading into a white blur behind them. The same town that had called her here and spat her out in front of strangers. After 10 minutes of silent walking, they reached a clearing in the woods, a small, worn-down cabin made of timber and thyme. Smoke rose weakly from its crooked chimney. A frozen creek whispered nearby. It wasn't much, but it was real. Shelter, he walked up and opened the creaking door, stepping aside for her to enter. It ain't a palace, but it's warm. Amara hesitated. Her instincts weren't screaming, but they weren't sleeping either. Still, she stepped inside. The cabin smelled like firewood and quiet loneliness. One cot, one chair, a cracked window patched with cloth, a rifle rested against. The door, a kettle hummed gently on the stove. He removed his hat finally, revealing dark eyes, a scar down the right cheek, and a face that had seen too many winters and too few kindnesses. You got a name? He asked. Amara. He nodded slowly. Nice. Name Strong. She waited, expecting him to return the courtesy, but he didn't. You always this quiet? She asked. He poured her tea without answering, set it in front of her, then leaned against the wall and said, Folks talk too much. Words can lie, silence don't. She held the cup, its warmth seeping into her fingers. For the first time since stepping off that train, she wasn't shaking. I came here to be someone's wife, she whispered. Instead, I became there. Shame, he didn't offer pity, only said, then maybe they weren't worth your name. His words landed like a stone in still water, simple, but deep. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, snow kept falling. Then, without lifting his head, he muttered, You're not the first they've done this to. Amara looked up. What? Do you mean he didn't answer right away? Just stared into the fire like it knew too much? Finally, he said, Let's just say Dry Creek's got a habit of burying the truth. And not everything they bury stays dead. The fire popped gently. In the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the rough wooden walls, Amara sat with her hands cupped around the tea. Eyes locked on the stranger across the room. His presence filled the space, not loud. Not aggressive, but like an old wound no one dared ask about. She wanted to speak again, to ask what he meant. About Dry Creek burying truth. But something in his face said, not yet. Instead, she studied the room. The bookshelf with 3 old novels, a carved wooden horse on the mantel, single photograph nailed to the wall, black and white, yellowed. At the corners, a woman and child, smiling. Both long gone. He caught her looking and said nothing. Amara finally broke the quiet. Was that your wife? He sipped from his cup, staring at the window. Once. Silence again. How'd she die? Softer this time. He didn't answer right away. And finally, same way all good things do in this land, slowly, and with no one watching. Amara nodded. She understood that kind of loss, even if her pain hadn't ended in death. Some heartbreak still carried funeral. Wait. He stood and moved toward the stove. You hungry? She hesitated. I don't want to be a burden. You came here alone, in snow. With not a soul to your name, he said. If anyone's the burden, it's the town that threw you out. He ladled something warm from a small pot, beans and salted pork. Simple, but enough. They ate in near silence, but the kind that held peace, not tension. When they finished, Amara leaned back and asked, "Why did you help me?" He met her eyes for the first time without flinching, as I've seen what happens when no one does. She waited. He exhaled slowly. 6 years ago, another woman came here, pretty proud, skin like yours. She was hired to teach at the school. And, Amara asked, already dreading the answer, they ran her out in 3 days, called her a liar, a whore, said she poisoned their children's minds. Did she? He shook his head. She taught poetry. His eyes stung, not from smoke, from knowing. Where is she now? She whispered. She left. Middle of the night, never said goodbye, and you let her. His jaw tensed. I didn't then. I won't now. Outside, the wind howled like it had something to say. The fire cracked louder now. The night thickened. Then came a knock. At the door, 1, then 2, slow, firm, and final. The stranger froze. His eyes narrowed. Amara's hand tightened on her cup. You expecting someone? He moved slowly toward the door, voice low. Not unless ghosts started wearing boots. The knock echoed again, this time louder, slower, 3 beats, as if the snow itself was holding its breath. The stranger moved closer to the door, one hand brushing against the rifle beside it, not grabbing it. Not yet. Just knowing where it was. Amara stood too. She didn't speak, didn't breathe too loud. Her body knew better than her mind that danger had a way of wearing boots. The man opened the door. Crack. Snow blew in. So did a voice. Didn't think you were the type to take. In strays? The man stepped outside and closed the door behind him, leaving Amara alone with nothing but the wind in her thoughts. She moved to the window slowly, pulled the curtain back just a sliver. 2 men stood outside. One was him, the stranger who'd taken her in. The other was older, the heavy brown coat and a twisted scar along his temple. They weren't yelling, but something in their stillness screamed louder than fists ever could. Outside, the man with the scar said, "You know what happens when you bring one of them in? Town's already boiling." She didn't do a damn thing except get left behind, the stranger replied. Don't matter. Her skin speaks louder than your mouth. You protect her, they'll think she's yours. She ain't anyone's but her own. The scarred man spat in the snow. That ain't how they'll see it. Amara's chest tightened. Each word hit like a hammer, but none worse than what came next. She's not the only one, Greeley's. Rejected, the stranger didn't move. His hands stayed at his sides. The scarred man smirked. You think this is the first time he lured one out here and left her to rot? Inside the cabin, Amara felt the blood drain from her face. Her hand gripped the curtain tighter. How many others? How long had this town played this game? Outside, the wind picked up. The man with the scar turned to leave, but paused just long enough to say, You want to save her? Fine, but remember this. The last man who tried bled out before sunrise. The stranger re-entered, face hard, snow melting off his coat. He didn't say a word as he locked the door behind him. Amara stepped back, voice low. Who was he talking about? He looked at her. For the first time, something like fear crept into his eyes. My brother. Amara stood frozen by the door, the echo of his last words still fresh in the room. My brother. The fire cracked, but it didn't warm what had just surfaced. She turned toward him slowly. You said the last man who tried to protect someone bled out before sunrise. That was your brother? He gave a slow nod, eyes fixed on the flame like it might erase the memory. His name was Eli, he said. He was a better man than me, believed folks could change, thought if he stood tall enough the town would learn to look up. Mara's voice was barely a whisper. Who did he try to save? He looked at her then. Really looked in. For a moment, his guard slipped. A girl not too different from you. Smart, strong, didn't fit their picture. And Greeley was part of it, even back then. Mara's breath caught. Greeley? You mean yes, he said, jaw clenched. The same man who wrote you sweet letters and promised a home. He's been playing this game longer than anyone. Knows. Brings women like you out here. Let's the town chew them up and spit out the bones. Her stomach twisted. Why? He exhaled, slow and bitter. Because it makes him feel powerful. Because no one ever stopped him. Amara gripped the chair beside her, knuckles white. And your brother? They dragged him into the woods, he said, voice dry. Said they were just sending a message. Only message I got was a body with his throat cut and the law. Looking the other way, silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that follows a warning shot. After a long pause, Amara spoke. So why help me now? He looked at her, eyes heavy with things unsaid. Because last time, I stayed silent. I buried blood. She swallowed hard. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. And what happens now? He picked up the rifle slowly and checked the chamber. Loaded now, said voice low and calm. Now we wait, 'cause if Greeley's history repeats itself, someone's coming. Tonight Amara stepped forward. You think he'd really... He cut her off gently. I don't think, Amara. I remember. Just then the fire flickered. A cold gust slipped through the window pane like a whisper, and in the silence that followed, a horse whinnied outside. But they hadn't heard one approach. The sound of the horse outside didn't belong. It was too still, too quiet like it. Had been standing there a long while waiting. The man stood first, rifle in hand, and moved toward the door. Not fast, just ready. Amara followed, staying behind him, fingers trembling, but fists clenched. She wasn't the same woman who stepped off that train anymore. Cold had a way of reshaping people. The man opened the door slowly, not fully, just enough. Snow blew in, but the wind didn't carry movement. Just silence. In a shape in the white, a single black horse stood no more than 20 feet from the cabin. Tethered to nothing, its saddle empty. No footprints around it, no rider in sight. What the? He muttered. Where's the rider? Amara whispered, eyes scanning the tree line. He stepped onto the porch, gun raised, every movement careful. Amara stayed at the doorway, heart pounding like a war drum. Then he saw it. Something tucked into the saddle horn. A piece of folded paper. He stepped closer, boots crunching through untouched snow, each breath visible in the freezing air. His fingers reached out and pulled the note free, unfolding it with cold. Cracked hands, he read it. His jaw tightened. Amara called out softly, "What does it say?" He didn't answer, not with words. He just turned and held the paper toward her. Amara stepped down from the cabin, took it with shaking hands, and read the 6 words that sliced through her like a blade. Send her out, or more die. She looked up at him, throat dry. They're not coming for me, she said. They're coming through me. He didn't blink. They want you humiliated, not dead. Then what's this? A warning, he said, like the one they gave Eli just before they strung him up. They both turned toward the trees. Something moved between the pines. Just a flicker. Shadow. Not close, but not far enough to ignore. He raised the rifle. Get back inside, Amara stood frozen. Is that horse... It didn't ride here. It was placed here, like a message. He didn't argue, because she was right, and just as he turned to lead her back to the door, a voice rang out from the woods. Low, familiar. Thomas Greeley. Let her walk out on her own, or we burn the place with both of you inside. Howled through the trees, but it couldn't drown out Greeley's voice. Let her walk out on her own, or we burn the place with both of you inside. He stood somewhere in the pines, hidden, smug, certain no one in Dry Creek would question what he was about to do. The stranger lowered the rifle slowly and looked at Amara. He's bluffing, she said. He has to be. No, he said, calm but grim. Greeley don't bluff. He whispers to cowards until they think they're a mob. Amara's breath came shallow. How many do you think are out there? He didn't answer at first. Then after a beat, enough. The cabin, the fire hissed as the wind pushed at the windows like ghostly hands. The kettle had long stopped singing. Now only silence reigned, until dash thunk. A sound at the side of the cabin, not a knock. Oh, warning. They moved fast. He doused the lamp, darkening the room instantly. Amara's heart pounded in her ears. He pulled her toward the far wall into the shadows. What do we do? she whispered. We hold, he said. They want fear first. They want to see if we'll beg. I won't, she said, voice steady. His eyes flicked to hers. Something like pride in them. I know. Outside, another voice rang out. Give her up. She doesn't belong here. Then another. She ain't even American. Then she's cursed. Like the last one. Each word stung, but Amara didn't flinch. Not this time. They're scared, she said. Not of me. What I remind them of. He nodded. Truth, they can't kill, so they try to bury it. She glanced at the window. They'll come soon. Then let them, he said, raising the rifle. But they're not walking through that door without consequence. Silence again, and then a flame appeared in the distance, then another torches. Figures moved through the trees, 5, maybe 6, holding fire like they held judgment. They're not here to talk, Mara whispered. No, he said, loading the second chamber. They're here to end what they started years ago. Suddenly, Dash crashed, the back window shattered. A burning rag soaked in oil landed near the hearth. Fire began to lick the floor. Amara grabbed the water bucket. He pulled his coat around her. We don't let this place fall. But before they could act, a second torch came flying through the front window. The cabin groaned like it knew it was under siege. Flames licked the wooden floorboards where the second torch landed. Smoke rose in furious coils, and the air turned thick with heat and fear. Amara dropped to her knees, beating the fire with a wet cloth, her hands red from steam, throat burning. The stranger smashed the back window open wider, letting smoke escape. But with it came another danger, a voice from the shadows. Burn it down. That'll teach her, another man shouted. Ain't no place for her in Dry Creek. Mara's eyes stung, not just from the smoke, but from the truth that even now they were more afraid of her presence than their own sins. The fire began to die. Smoke thinned. But outside, the chanting grew louder and closer. The man pulled Amara behind the table, now flipped and reinforced with wood and metal. The rifle rested in his hands, like it belonged there. They're coming, he said. How many? I count 6, maybe 7, and us. It gave the ghost of a grin. Just us. Amara swallowed hard.
Ow.
Then let's make just us. Enough. He looked at her not like a man who saw a burden, but like a man who saw an equal. Take this, he said, handing her a second revolver. It kicks like hell. Don't let it scare you. She held it tight. They've already done worse. Then silence fell again. A stillness that made every crack in the wood feel louder than thunder. Footsteps approached, slow, measured. Someone stepped onto the porch, then dash bang. A shot burst through the window. Wood splintered. Mara hit the floor. Another shot rang out, this one from inside. He'd fired back, clean and fast. A scream followed. One of them was hit. Outside, chaos broke. Fall back. They're firing back. You didn't say he had a gun? Then go get yours, Jed. I ain't dying for Greeley's lies. Amara crawled beside him, coughing. You got one, she said. Yeah, he muttered. But they ain't running. Yet, she looked through the broken glass. Several figures scrambled through the trees. Some ducking low, one holding his leg. She turned to him, her voice steady, despite the shaking in her limbs. We won't last through the night like this. I know. He looked out again, then added, almost to himself, but maybe we don't have to. He turned to Amara, eyes sharper now, calculated. You said Greeley courted you with letters, right? She nodded. Wrote me for months. Still. Got him? Her brows furrowed. In my suitcase. Then go get them. Why? He stared through the broken window at the forest. Because if those letters say what I think they do, then it ain't just fire. We can return. Amara blinked. You're saying we fight them with words? He looked at her. No. We bury them with truth. The cabin still crackled with smoke, but the worst of the fire had died. Now only tension. Burned hotter. Amara opened her suitcase with trembling fingers, not from fear, but from memory. Folded neatly at the bottom were Greeley's letters, dozens of them, tied with a blue ribbon he once called the color of a bride's heart. Handed them to the stranger, who sat at the table with the rifle still close. He flipped through the pages like a man scanning for more than words for leverage. "Read this one," he said, sliding a letter forward. Amara picked it up, her voice soft but clear. "I cannot wait to show you this land I've built.
Ow.
Walk Main Street by my side and prove to every doubter that love makes its own rules. Yours, Thomas Greeley." She swallowed. "That's the one," he said. "He promised you marriage, a future, publicly." She looked at him. So. If he denies you now, these letters prove he's a liar. Worse, he lured you across state lines under false pretenses. That's not just cruel, it's criminal. Amara's eyes widened. He'd lose everything. "Exactly," he said. "That's what terrifies men like him." Outside, boots scraped on snow again. More. Movement. Another torch tossed. This time it landed near the well. No fire. Just intimidation. The man folded 2 of the strongest letters and slipped them into his coat pocket. "If I walk into town tomorrow with these," he said, "and show 'em to the right folks," Greeley's finished, "will never let you get that far," Amara said. "That's why I won't go." He looked at her, eyes steady. "You will?" Silence. The kind that makes the walls lean in. "What?" she asked. "They'll be watching me. Waiting for me to make a move. You. They still think you're a victim. You walk into Dry Creek at dawn, looking broken, holding these letters people will listen." Her throat tightened. "I'm not broken," he smiled, "but only slightly." "I know. That's why it'll work." She stepped back from the table. "You're asking me to walk back into the same place that tried to destroy me." "No," he said. "I'm asking you to walk in and show them you survived." She paced the room once, twice, looked at the gun, the burned walls, the sky outside slowly lightening into the hint of morning, and then she nodded. "I'll do it." He moved closer, voice low now. "Don't run, don't shout. Walk into that saloon, say his name, and read them one line." "Which line?" He looked her in the eyes. "You'll walk Main Street by my side." Mara's lips parted. "That'll tear his whole world down," she said. "That's the plan." Suddenly a knock, but not on the door this time. At the back of the cabin, 3 slow raps, and then a voice, female muffled. "Through the wall, you don't know me. But I know what Greeley did to the last girl." The knock still echoed in. The quiet 3 taps. Careful, intentional. Amara and the man froze. Eyes locked on the back wall of the cabin where smoke stains still lingered. Then came that voice again, soft. Female, tired, but urgent. "I know what he did to her. And I know what they buried to forget it." Amara took a slow step forward, heart racing. "Who are you?" Pause then. "Someone who watched too." Long in silence, man lowered his rifle slightly, then moved toward the back. He opened the rear door an inch. Standing there in the dim light was a woman in her 40s, wrapped in a faded shawl. Her cheeks were wind-bitten, but her eyes burned with old secrets. "I brought this," she said, handing him a folded envelope. He took it. Smiling, and a marriage certificate to Thomas Greeley. "Dated 12 years ago. She was my sister," the woman said. "Her name was Leela. She came here just like her. Bright, kind, too trusting. Greeley married her in secret. Then turned the town against her when she got pregnant." Amara stepped beside the man, voice trembling. "What happened to her?" "Disappeared," the woman said flatly. "He claimed she ran off in the night, but I found this last year." She nodded to the document, buried in the churchyard behind the stable. No headstone. Amara's breath caught. They buried her. Without a name. The man's jaw locked. "You're telling me there was a wife before?" The woman nodded, and she died carrying his child. They said it was illness. "No. But she wrote me weeks before, said she feared the people he ran with more than the fever in her blood." The cabin felt smaller now, like the truth had squeezed out the air. Amara stared at the picture. The girl had soft eyes. Her skin just a shade darker than hers. "She was like me," she whispered. "No," the woman said gently. "She was you just 10 winters earlier." Silence fell again. Then the man spoke. "Why now? Why come here tonight?" The woman looked down. "Because when I saw the fire in the sky, I knew it was happening again. And this time, I won't let them erase her memory by erasing you. Amara swallowed hard. Then help me bring him down. The woman reached into her shawl and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. She placed it in Amara's hands. Lila's diary, she said. Every lie, every bruise. Every time he said she didn't belong. Amara gripped it like a weapon, and for the first time in days, her tears didn't come from pain, they came from rage. Then, from the trees a single gunshot, not at the cabin, not near it. From town, they all turned. The man stepped out onto the porch far off in the distance. A red glow lit the sky above Dry Creek. Not fire, a building ablaze, and not just any building, the sheriff's office. The red glow above Dry Creek flickered against the sky like a second sunrise. But no one in the cabin mistook it for hope. It was destruction. And it meant someone in town had just decided the law no longer mattered. Amara stood frozen. Da, the diary still clutched in her hands. The sheriff's office, she whispered. Why that? The man stepped out further, eyes fixed on the distant fire, because someone's trying to erase something. Fast. The woman beside them, Leela's sister, pulled her shawl. Tight, or someone in town's finally had enough. Either way, the man said, Greeley's grip is slipping. Back inside, they spread the letters, the diary, and the marriage certificate on the table like war plans. Amara flipped through Leela's entries. He said he loved me today, then said I shouldn't speak in front of his friends. They call me the dark one at the church. Even the preacher won't look me in the eye. I'm carrying his child, but he won't hold my hand in public. Amara's throat tightened with each line. History wasn't repeating, it had. Never stopped. The man watched her. You still willing to walk into town, he asked. She nodded, but not alone. He raised an eyebrow. I think others are ready. Now, she said. They just needed proof someone survived. He looked at the diary. We've got more than proof. We've got his voice, his promises, his shame written by his own hand. Suddenly hoofbeats echoed through the trees. Not one, not two, many. The woman's face went pale. That's not townsfolk. That's riders. He moved fast, grabbing his rifle again. Mara stepping to the window. In the pale light of the burning sky, they saw 5 horses cutting through the snow, heading not toward Dry Creek. They're trying to end it before morning. Mara's jaw clenched. Then they're too late. She turned to the woman. Can you ride? The woman blinked. I haven't in years, you'll remember, Amara said. Because you're not walking into that town alone either. The man looked at both of them, his face unreadable. Then quietly, he walked to the trunk at the edge of the room and opened it. Inside, an old marshal's coat. Badge still pinned, dusty, forgotten, untouched since the day he quit. He stared at it for a beat, then he pulled it out. I swore I'd never wear this again, he muttered. Amara stepped forward, firm, then wear it for her. And for Lila. And for every name they never bothered to remember. He held the badge in his hand, the weight of it heavier than any gun, and then, slowly, he pinned it to his chest. Outside, the hoofbeats grew louder, closer, and then a rifle cracked. A bullet tore through the upper window, splintering wood, missing. Amara by inches, she dropped to the floor as the man returned fire through the shattered pane. The woman screamed. They're circling. He pulled Amara to the side. Too late to run now, he said. Breath sharp, and then he added, if we're dying tonight, we're dying remembered. Remembra. The windows rattled as the horses closed in. Amara crawled toward the overturned table, while the ex-marshal, now wearing the badge he once buried, reloaded with grim precision. Leela's sister pressed her back to the hearth, eyes locked on the door like she was staring down her own ghost. From outside, a voice rang out, low, guttural, confident. You had your chance. Time's up. Another gunshot cracked. This one into the cabin wall. Warning. But Amara didn't flinch. She stood slowly, pressed a palm to the cold wood of the diary and said, no one else dies in silence. She grabbed the letters, tucked them inside her coat, and tied the diary tight with its ribbon. The man looked at her. What are you doing? I'm not waiting for them to write this ending. She opened the back door just enough to slip. Outside into the shadows, slipping between trees like wind from behind the barn. Amara saw the riders, 5 men, rifles slung, torches held low. One of them had a scar down his face, the same one who'd threatened the stranger days before. And standing just behind them, half shrouded in smoke, was Thomas Greeley himself. He wasn't shouting, didn't need to, just standing there, watching the fire burn someone else's life down like he had before. Amara stepped out from the shadows. "Looking for me?" she said, her voice slicing through the snow-drenched silence. The riders spun. Greeley stepped forward. "Well," he smirked. The runaway bride finally finds her voice. Amara stood tall. "I didn't run. You left me." At that station. In front of everyone, he shrugged. "Didn't know I needed to explain myself to charity cases." Amara pulled out the letters and held them high. "You did when you signed." "These," the men looked at each other. "What's that?" "Letters," she said, in his handwriting, sent across state lines. "With promises to a woman he now says doesn't belong." Now? Greeley's face darkened. She stepped forward. "There's more. A diary." "His first wife's, the one he'd buried without a name." Scarface growled. "She's lying." Greeley said she said nothing. Just like Lila. Just like every woman who came here thinking she was loved. She looked Greeley dead in the eyes. "I'm not the first, but I'll be the last." The men hesitated. Even Scarface shifted his grip, and one of them, Jed, spoke. "You told us she was a fraud? A whore who lied her way here?" "She ain't," said another. "T did." "Write those letters?" "I saw one weeks ago at the post. Came in furious. Told me to throw it in the fire." Greeley turned. "Shut your damn." "No," Jed cut him off. "You lied to us." "What?" Before anyone could move, a gunshot split the air. Everyone ducked. But it didn't come from Amara, and it didn't hit any of them. It came from the trees, a single warning shot. And then a voice, from deep in the woods, a child's voice. Mama said, "Lies burn fast, ... but truth burns longer." The voice from the trees froze every man to his boots. Mama said lies burn fast, ... but truth burns longer. Scarface spun, rifle half raised. Amara held her breath. A small figure emerged from behind the tree line, no older than 10, wrapped in a patchy coat too big for his frame, hat too low over his brow. His boots dragged like they weren't meant for running, but his eyes. His eyes held something the other's deep memory, pain, and something that looked too much like Greeley. Amara whispered, stunned. "Lila had a child?" The boy took one slow step forward. "She didn't die from sickness," he said, voice steady like it wasn't the first time he'd said it to himself in the dark. "She died from heartbreak. From being told every day. She didn't belong." Greeley went pale. "That's enough," he barked. But the boy didn't flinch. "She waited for you," he said. "Right until the night you sent Uncle Red to finish it." Gasps echoed among the men. Jed muttered, "Red. He's been missing years." Greeley stepped forward, tone venom. "That woman was sick in the head." The boy looked at him dead. "In the eye, she was your wife." He held up a small item, something wrapped in cloth, then unwrapped it. A broken brooch. Same one that Lila wore in the old photo. "I found this behind the stable," said. "In the dirt, with her name scratched into the wood." Amara clutched the diary tighter. The truth had always been buried. Just like Lila, one writer dismode. Then another Greeley's voice cracked. "Don't be stupid," but Scarface had already lowered his gun. Jed shook his head. "You lied about her. You lied about this girl. What else?" The boy looked at Amara. "She looks like Mama. That's why he hates her." Suddenly, the man from the cabin, the ex-marshal, stepped from the tree shadows, rifle slung over. One shoulder badge, glinting in firelight. "Then I guess it's time Dry Creek learns who Thomas Greeley really is." Greeley stepped back, his hand moved toward his coat. Quick, sudden, desperate. But before he could pull the revolver, boy raised a slingshot snap. The rock struck Greeley's wrist clean. The revolver hit the snow. One rider grabbed him. Another tore the letters from his coat. And just like that, Thomas Greeley finally looked small. Amara stepped forward, standing beside the boy. "What's your name?" she asked softly. He looked up, proud and broken all at once. "Eli." "He," said Eli Greeley. The wind stilled. Even the snow seemed to hold its breath. And just when they thought it was over, a scream came from the cabin. Lila's sister panicked, terrified. Amara turned, blood running cold. "Where's the diary?" The scream tore through the pines. Amara spun around, her boots sinking into the half-melted snow. "Where's the diary?" she yelled, racing toward the cabin. Lila's sister stood at the doorway, trembling. "It was here." Right here on the table, the man reached her side, scanning the room. The overturned table, the scattered shells, the burnt floor, but the diary was gone. The ribbon lay crumpled near the hearth, torn loose like it had been ripped away. Amara's voice shook. No one came through the front. Then someone was already inside, the man said grimly. He stepped to the side door. Opened it, boot prints. Fresh, small, fast, running west. He looked at Amara. Someone grabbed it while we were outside. Amara's heart sank. "It's the only copy." "They can burn paper," the woman said, voice hollow. "But they can't burn what's already been heard." Amara looked at the boar Elihu, stood by the porch, watching the fire still, smoldering on the horizon. "They'll try," she whispered. "But it's too late." Suddenly hoofbeats again, not charging, just. One rider, slow, measured from the tree line, emerged. Sheriff Brandt, the lawman of Dry Creek, hat pulled low, duster lined with soot. He dismounted and looked around at the scattered riders. At Greeley slumped on the ground, at Amara standing tall. "I heard fire," he said flatly. "And then I saw your badge." His eyes landed on the man. The ex-marshal met his gaze. "A lot of fire tonight, but only one man started it." He tossed the stack of letters to Brandt. Brandt flipped one open, read a line, then looked at Greeley. "You signed this?" Greeley stayed silent. The boy stepped forward. "Sheriff, my name's Eli. My mama was your niece, Lila." The sheriff's face changed like stone breaking. His jaw worked, eyes shifting, something between shame and rage. "I thought she ran," he muttered. "That's what he told us." Eli shook his head. "She died here." Brandt didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, slowly, he drew his cuffs. "Thomas Greeley, you're under arrest for fraud, abuse, unlawful abandonment, and conspiracy to cover the death of Lila Greeley." The cuffs clicked cold around Greeley's wrists. It was done, or so they thought. As Brandt turned, one of the riders whispered to Scarface, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "She took the diary." Scarface narrowed his eyes. "Who?" "The man." Pointed toward the hill. Scarface's face twisted. "I saw her leave 10 minutes ago. She was part of the town watch. Clara something." Amara turned to them. "What did you say?" Scarface looked at her. "The girl with the green shawl from the general store. She slipped away with something in her coat. Thought she was just scared." Amara's blood ran cold. Clara. The same girl who'd whispered a warning at the station weeks ago. The same girl who'd once cried while folding Greeley's letters behind the post counter. "She worked for him," Amara whispered. "But she knew everything." The man's face went hard. "She has the diary. And if she makes it to the Canyon Fork?" Amara didn't wait for him to finish. She was already running. The snow had started. It's falling again. Soft, silent, deceptively peaceful. But Amara's breath came in clouds, sharp and fast as she chased. The hoof prints through the pine pass following the one girl who held the last piece of Lila's story. Clara. The same timid store girl who used to keep her eyes down, who'd once handed Amara her telegrams without a word, and now the thief of the truth. The trail bent west, cutting through a narrow ravine. Amara ducked low under a fallen limb, snow brushing her shoulders. The tracks were fresh, not even windblown yet. The sound of hooves. echoed ahead. She was close. At the ridge above the canyon fork, Clara finally slowed. Her horse stomped nervously, sensing the tension. Clara dismounted clumsily, clutching the diary to her chest beneath the green shawl. Amara approached on foot, hands open. "Clara," she called, breathless. "Don't do this." Clara turned, eyes wide. "I didn't steal it. I took it because I knew what they'd do." "You think Greeley's gone?" "He's roots, not a branch. Cut him down and 3 more grow." Amara stepped closer. "That diary is the last record of a life they buried. It's not just Lila's, but mine, too." Clara clutched it tighter. "You weren't." "The first," she said, "and you won't be the last." But they never listen. "I'm not here to be heard anymore," Amara said, voice low. "I am here to be believed." Clara looked down at the leather-bound book. "I remember her," she whispered. "She used to bring me ribbons. She said they were colors of belonging. After she disappeared, they told me to forget her." She looked up, tears frozen on her lashes, but I never did. Amara stepped closer. "Then don't let her die again." Clara hesitated, then held the diary out. But before Amara could reach it, a single shot cracked the canyon air. Clara screamed. The book fell into the snow. Amara dropped to cover its hand from the shadow of the rocks behind them. A 6th rider emerged, not Scarface, not Jed, not Greeley, but a man in preacher's black. The same one who refused to marry Amara. He raised his rifle again, voice cold as ice. "You should have stayed a secret." The preacher's silhouette stood black against the snow. Rifle aimed, breath fogging like smoke from a cold soul. Amara shielded Clara, her own body curled around the fallen diary. The preacher's voice trembled not from fear but fury. "You don't know what this town paid to stay clean." Amara rose, slow and defiant. "I know what it cost the ones you buried." Cocked the rifle. "I warned Greeley not to bring you. You weren't meant for this place. You were meant to vanish like the others." Clara cried out, "She's not the one who needs to vanish." But Amara didn't flinch. "You think you're God because you wear a collar?" she said, voice cutting like wind through bone. "But I've met God. He doesn't dress in cowardice." Suddenly the click of a second rifle echoed behind the preacher. He stiffened. A voice followed. "The ex-marshal." "You may preach silence," he said, stepping into view. "But out here, we speak with truth." The preacher turned, slow, then lowered the gun. Amara walked forward and picked up the diary. She opened to the first page. Leela's words, handwritten and shaking. "If someone finds this, tell them I was real." Back. In Dry Creek by noon, the town stood frozen like it knew something had changed. Sheriff Brandt nailed a notice to the saloon post. Thomas Greeley convicted. Trial to follow. But no one read it aloud. They were too busy watching Amara ride in. With the diary held high, and right behind her, Eli, Clara, Leela's sister. The ex-marshal, wearing his badge like it finally meant something again. She stepped onto the saloon steps, looked at the townsfolk, and said loud enough for every porch and alley to hear, "I wasn't white enough to belong here, but I was real enough to survive." Not a soul moved. Then Eli walked up beside her, held her hand, and whispered, "Mama would be proud." And in that moment, without a judge, a jury, or a headline, Dry Creek changed. Not because the truth won, but because it refused to stay buried. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you that truth can rise from the ashes, then don't leave without letting us know. Like this video if Amara's courage touched you. Subscribe for more stories that fight silence with soul. Comment below. Did justice win today, or just begin? Let's keep telling stories that matter, because voices like Amara's, they still exist, and they still need to be heard.